The Admirals, I feel like, have an interesting perspective in the world of One Piece. We have our protagonists who are pirates, therefore it makes the world government the enemy, but in actuality, the government is just doing what's best for the people, some more than others, but that's besides the point. I feel like the different POVs from the big powers in One Piece really is one of the best things the series captivates on, as every individual believes in something different. This is no different for the Admirals. Despite them all working in the same position, each Admiral has a different perspective and represents something different. Let's start off with Green Bull, who has had the least amount of screen time amongst the Admirals. His powers allow him to produce plants and manipulate plants around him, which contrasts well with his personality, as he's somewhat of a hothead. Although he's only been shown in like 2 chapters max, Green Bull still has powers that contrast to his personality and is shown when having an advantage in a fight. He just embarrassed them, yet dips so fast when thinking of facing a Yonko, which obviously would be a challenge. And he somewhat reminds me of like Raditz from Dragon Ball, where he looks strong amongst the weak but is a coward deep down trying to cope with his ego and reputation. You could say Green Bull is the worst of the best in this case, which makes sense as his showings haven't been the greatest, scrapping with a fatigued 9 scabbards and peeing his pants when coming across Shanks. Next we have Fujitor, who definitely is a lot more complex than the rage plant we briefly chatted about. Fujitor was one of the main individuals who was against the warlord system ever since Crocodile was defeated by the likes of Luffy. Fujitor is a man who also legit blinded himself as he didn't want to see the atrocities of the world, which is kind of funny as his devil fruit powers are manipulating gravity and summoning meteors, causing clear damage to the surrounding world he swore so deeply to protect. And it wasn't until Monkey D. Luffy that he wanted to actually see what someone looked like. Fujitor at the end of the day is a man who fights with his heart and represents the best of the Marines currently. He'll do whatever is specifically right and doesn't just side with the system, shown in Dressrosa with Doflamingo. And let's be real, Green Bull probably would have just attacked the Straw Hats blindly and not even thinking of letting them escape. Not only do these two contrast well with each other, but are the 2 newest admirals we get introduced to, plus are known as a duo. I also think it's funny how he mainly faces off against Sabo for most of the time he's on screen, Sabo being someone who legit represents how the ones at the top can cause the most damage, and showing how that system in itself isn't always how it seems, which is what Fujitor is trying to stop and make the system balanced. Wait a minute, how does bro have the most going for him out of any admiral and was introduced in like episode 630? As for his power, his feats are a little vague. Everyone thinks he's just the strongest because he could summon a meteor, but Fatigued Law and Suppressed Doflamingo were able to take care of this. It doesn't really matter. His best feat is him scaling to Sabo, which a lot of people like to say Sabo over Ace, which could prove as to why the Admirals are somewhat comparable in stats, since a Fatigued Ace can clash and react to Admirals. Well, it would at least apply to speed, because Ace clashing with Aokiji, you could just argue devil fruit advantage. And I don't think Fujitor would be above anybody besides Green Bull anyway, from what's currently been shown. It's time to talk about the OG3. Let's start off with the former admiral, that being Aokiji, the first admiral that was introduced into the series and has gone through a lot since then. Aokiji, despite having ice powers and looked at as this cold, merciless marine, Aokiji's heart is weirdly in the right place. As we see in Enies Lobby, he has a history with the criminal Nico Robin, who despite throwing her life away was saved by the people who cared about her. Aokiji seeing this and them overcoming the odds, and even despite fighting an admiral, the crew did whatever it took to save Robin, and Aokiji, like in Fujitor's case, can see the flaws in the system and sees Robin's best interest. Side note, he might have, keyword might have, we don't know for sure, but intentionally not kill Saul and allow him to break free. However, unlike Fujitor, he was willing to attempt to take over and change the system for the better, leading into his battle with Akainu. After fighting for 10 days and even scarring Akainu, Aokiji would eventually lose, leading into him abandoning the Marines and becoming an accomplice to Blackbeard. However, that doesn't mean he wouldn't be a GOAT anymore, shown in Punk Hazard. We know he's at Whole Cake during the events of Law vs. Blackbeard, currently kidnapping Pudding. And it's sad to see Aokiji spiral, as before Fujitor came along, and maybe besides Garp, Aokiji represented a side of justice that seemed more free and fair to everyone. He could have changed the system for the better, but he simply wasn't strong enough. As for Aokiji's strength, well, I mean, it speaks for itself. Bro fought Akainu for 10 days straight, bullied the likes of Jozu, took 0 damage from Marco's attack, and was casually clashing with Ace, having the devil fruit disadvantage. People regard him as the second strongest admiral, which I mean is pretty fair. Alright, now let's talk about the man with that dog in him! Although Akainu has the power to turn into magma itself, his devil fruit contrasts to his cold heart and ideology. Akainu will do whatever it takes to get the job done and does not take weakness lightly. Any instance of a marine showing weakness or even the pirates running away, he won't hesitate to call them out or even kill them. He is also a man on a mission, let me tell you. Even after getting folded by Whitebeard's attack, bro comes back and is fine with the idea of fighting an entire Yonko commander squad plus Crocodile, because it meant that he can finally kill Luffy and the pirates that would soon go on to take over the Great Era. Akainu represents a side of justice that's definitely not to the majority's liking, however, to say that it's ineffective would be a lie. We all hate bro, but weirdly enough, his methods work, and it's without a doubt to say that he is the strongest admiral that we've seen so far, not counting the likes of Sengoku. He is the only admiral to have a statement about his devil fruit being the highest tier of offensive power, and I mean, he did the best against Whitebeard, so it's self-explanatory. And I saved the best admiral for last because, like I said in my Minato vs Kizaru video, I am a Kizaru enthusiast, ladies and gentlemen. Seriously though, I think to understand Kizaru, we have to understand Aokiji and Akainu first. The reason I say that is because Akainu is someone who sees the worst in people while Aokiji sees the best. Green Bull and Fujitor too, weirdly enough, have a similar dynamic, but Kizaru is the only admiral to not represent what's good or bad. In every situation he's in, he's just simply carrying out the task he was ordered to do. He doesn't hate pirates specifically in any way or will go out of his way to save one or seek their best interest. Kizaru doesn't care about any of that. He's the only admiral who legitimately does his job and has the most fun possible. Even when facing the likes of Roger's right-hand man, the idea of that entertains him. He sees Marco, who takes no damage from his attacks, and would proceed to go on to mock him with his same line. He's shown instances where he could have killed but just trolled and actually almost killed Zoro since he felt like it. Kizaru is also notorious for his devil fruit, which allows him to manipulate and become light itself, making him apparently the fastest admiral. Yet he talks the slowest and is more than likely faded when he's on the job. Kizaru as well is always eager to get the job done, shown in Sabaody, and is also the first one to try and throw hands with Whitebeard. He even asked Akainu to go to Wano and is now the one going to Egghead to stop the Straw Hats a second time. We also know the majority of the admirals are also very passionate at what they believe justice to be, but Kizaru really doesn't go about his duties this way. Think of Kizaru as the middleman, and as for his scaling, well, allow me to cook. In terms of scaling, Kizaru could be faster than Akainu and Aokiji, but it's already been implied that it's just Akainu is 1, Aokiji is 2, and Kizaru is 3. But we have not seen Kizaru go all out yet, and so far in all of his battles, he has never really been pressed. He was winning in his fight against Rayleigh, and Rayleigh was sweating against him. Then Marco, who has regen, wasn't really doing anything in his fight with Kizaru because he was just simply taking no damage. But the only difference here is that Kizaru doesn't have regen. And then Whitebeard, who was already dying basically, couldn't touch Kizaru one time during Marineford. And we clearly see him not being afraid to fight anyone, being fine with taking down Kaido and Big Mom by himself. Although he'd more than likely get destroyed, it's nice to see the confidence in Kizaru's own abilities and where he may potentially scale in the future. Although none of the admirals' backstories have been shown to us, the admirals are still deeper than a lot of people give them credit for, and hopefully we get backstories for them soon, aka just Akainu and Kizaru, as we know nothing about them. What about Green Bull? What about Green Bull, bro? And I hope this video helped you guys understand the admirals a little bit better. Take care, suggest me some videos so I can make some money. Peace out.